Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, I'm going to do something a little different here. I noticed you see this photo here, and it looks like a lot of trash, a lot of clutter. Well, it is. So, I wanted you to see an example of how some of the apartment buildings are struggling because let me explain to you how this and why this is happening. So, early in March, before the pandemic, there were some places that were clean and they may not have been the greatest places to live, but they were relatively, picked up. There wasn't trash everywhere. But as the lockdowns began to happen, a lot of things started changing. People's job situations started changing. Um, and it changed a lot of things. And so a lot of people know that businesses have been affected, landlords and tenants have been affected, um, places where maybe the person has started up a business, they had to decide whether to keep it open or close it. So, in terms of neighborhood communities, this is a South Los Angeles apartment complex. And so, what has happened is now I have to say this in a way where people can really understand why this is happening. This is happening because not because the landlord is neglecting the building, it's because the tenants, there's a few tenants in this apartment complex that are, even before the pandemic, that are trouble tenants. So there are some situations where I already know that a lot of people have been affected by the pandemic. But prior to the pandemic, pre pandemic, prior to all of this COVID 19, there had been buildings in some of the more poor communities where some people were probably, they were really just rent to rent, month to month. And some people might have already been going through something before the pandemic. So when the pandemic happened, it changed a lot. But pre pandemic, we also had some people who, they might have just had other things that they were engaged in that weren't legal activities. And so some people use this situation now to go full throttle, so to speak. Now they can engage in whatever criminal activities openly. They can be defiant towards the other tenants that are trying to keep a place to stay, that are struggling as well. They can also create an environment that is unhealthy, unsanitary, and unsafe. And so that is what has happened to some of the units, some of the apartments in South Los Angeles. And so this is just a picture of a carport in a South Los Angeles complex. And so I'm going to take you through so you can see some photos of how this looks. It's looking like this every day. It's been like this for about, I would say, in this particular complex, it has been like this for about maybe 4 or 5 months now during the pandemic, where trash will pile up. And it has gotten to the point where waste management, when they come to pick up the trash, it's so overrun with trash because people are just totally disrespecting the building. And they're doing it, some are doing it because they want to just take over the building because there's still a presence of drug activity in the communities. that, believe it or not, even though the community is struggling, you'll have people that are taking advantage of people's misery. And so they are making money. Um, like the big tech companies make money during the pandemic. Well, the crime underworld makes money off of people's misery during the pandemic. And so when they can't openly and be active with their illegal activities, what they do in defiance is sometimes they just throw all of their trash on the ground in defiance that they cannot do whatever it is that they want. And so some of the buildings have been overrun with squatters prior to the pandemic, people who have sort of wanted this mentality to just run the building because there may not be a building manager that lives on the premises. And so let me walk you through these photos. This is the way this one complex looks in South Los Angeles, and it's really troublesome. So you see, I believe it's to the right. You can see where the trash bin is, but the trash bin is not getting the trash. The ground is getting the trash. And so that's how it's looking. And so it looks pretty bad. And so it looks like this. And then when someone comes from the building companies to clean it up, it winds up with more trash and more debris. Now, more recently, what has been starting to collect is food trash and waste from human waste. And so it is a big problem. And so I'm gonna give up the the um the street of where this is. It's on 91st Street off Vermont in Manchester. And this building has had a lot of issues with squatters and people that are disrespectful in this particular unit. So I'm gonna kind of blow up this picture so you can kind of see how this looks, and it can get a lot worse than this. And so this is probably the lesser of what has happened in this unit, this particular building, which is located off of Vermont and Manchester. And so this building is, I will say honestly, and I'm not picking sides here, but honestly, this is not the landlord's fault. This is the fault of the previous people who were running this building, and they didn't do a good job of getting the troubled people out of the building. So when the pandemic happened, the people remained there and they weren't told to move soon enough. And so now they are wreaking havoc on this building. And so um, let's thumb through the pictures. So this is just an idea of how the the maintenance is going with buildings like these in South Los Angeles, and how the pandemic has caused a lot of anger. It has caused people to become defiant to where they show signs of disrespect. And so it's straight across the board. You have different things going on here. You have people who lost their jobs. You have people who may have their hours cut shorter. You have people who maybe they're being demanded to pay rent and they don't know what they're going to do. They fear eviction. Then you have people who are taking advantage of this situation. They already were bad tenants. There are certain fraction that might have already had issues and they were doing things they shouldn't have, and they somehow got stuck somewhere. And now they're taking it out on the building and taking it out on the other residents and making it miserable for them to live and uninhabitable for people to live in these environments. And so if you, I will put down the address to this particular unit, and I don't know when they're going to come to do any cleaning, but I will tell you this, when they clean, it only stays like that for about maybe 2 or 3 days. And then, from what I'm hearing from certain people that are around this area, they've seen trash and debris in front of the building. They've seen it on the side of the building, and it has attracted rats. Rats. And so they've been calling exterminators to get the rats away because the rats are attracted to the food and the food boxes and trash that is being placed on the ground. And the rats are chewing their way through the apartments. And so, anyway, I just wanted to give you this small clip so you can see how some of these situations can really turn bad where people are being disrespectful to buildings because they have gripes or either they want to engage in illegal activities, and when they're not able to do so or they're told that they can't create an environment that is unsafe for people to live there, and they get defiant and they do things like this. And so this is what is very scary because being it shows that there is a pandemic and COVID-19 has already infected a lot of people, to have all of this laying around and the germs. Um, the health department has been called on multiple occasions for this particular unit, and so it is back like this again. So it's constant that this is happening, and so there's also been some drug activity in this particular unit, and it's ongoing. And so, having said that, I'm going to let this video go. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for listening.